The Everyman Radio Podcast.
New music.
Every night you sing the blues, always wishing it was you to hold the crown, the one they talk about. Pacing around in your room, all your reasons stuck like a loop beneath your shoes, holding you back from you. Stand in the sun, burning for fun. You're out looking in when you've already won. You know how it tastes, but you throw it away, pushing it out when it's pulling you in. Never been closer now to what it's all been about. When will you figure it out? You're unbreakable. From the top, run it back. You're the one and only act. We're in the wings to cheer you on at sea. All of the lights up ahead, all this existential dread keeps creeping in. But it's just the part you're in. Stand in the sun, burning for fun. You're out looking in when you've already won. You know how it tastes, but you throw it away, pushing it out when it's calling you in. Never been closer now to what it's all been about. When will you figure it out? You're unbreakable. Never been the one to see it for what it is. It's just backwards kind of living. Everybody else says you got so much to give. Some people never find it. Look a little closer for us, darling. We're dying to get you on your way. What will it take for you to face? You're unbreakable. Stand in the sun, burning for fun. You're out looking in when you've already won. You know how it tastes, but you throw it away, pushing it out when it's pulling you in. Stand in the sun, burning for fun. You're out looking in when you've already won. You know how it tastes, but you throw it away, pushing it out when it's pulling you in. Never been closer now to what it's all been about. When will you figure it out? You're unbreakable.
Welcome, everybody, to this week's episode. We really appreciate you joining us. This podcast really shows us how we can all learn, live, and thrive off of each other. By sharing our knowledge through our conversations, we will impart some knowledge whilst learning ourselves how to progress even further. Here is your host.
Welcome again to Everyman Radio, Brent.
Well, thanks for having me back.
It's great to see you. How have you been?
Stressed out. Job hunting right now. It's very touch and go. I had a couple of interviews, but they kind of fell through. Nobody followed up. So we're going to keep job hunting, looking for like a really sort of high-end like nanny gig, but we'll see what I can find.
Okay.
And I'm still on unemployment, and I'm still negotiating with my landlord here in New York City, trying to come to a reasonable agreement about what I'm going to owe them for, I guess the last time I paid rent was February. I haven't paid since, or March, somewhere in there. So I owe them like tens of thousands of dollars.
Yeah.
So, and we were negotiating, and then all of a sudden they stopped talking, they stopped replying. So now I think they might just be waiting.
I think
So.
it seems almost everyone's in the same position, it seems. I don't know. Everybody seems to just be owing lots of money to all sorts of different people collecting.
This is late stage capitalism, right? You know, just huge piles of debt everywhere. You know, I don't even know. At this point, I'm just so suspicious of the powers that be that I have a sneaking suspicion they're sort of just trying to collapse the currency because they want to introduce something new.
Yeah.
And nobody's gonna do new unless the old is just, you know, not working.
I do find that interesting. So I was, say, 6 months ago, 4 months, 3 months, following Max Kaiser quite a lot. I quite enjoy the way he talks about finances and his experience, and yeah, he has very much bought into Bitcoin and does tend to be very much a promoter of it. But yeah, he's very good at pointing out just how debt-ridden whole economies are, and I think I forget who the other guy I was watching as well. It'll come to me, but I think for some reason it was going to be around the Trump election time when the total financial system collapses big time, where they've lost control already, but really will lose control. So it will be very interesting times, I think.
Yeah, well, especially, you know, who knows what's going to happen with this election? Like, we've seen a lot of social unrest here.
Well, I know what's going to happen with the election. Trump wins. That's it. So why don't they just just cut all the nonsense? Say, yeah, he's doing it, so he's going to carry on.
Well, I guess we'll have to wait and see. You know,
I already know.
Well, you can't underestimate the deep state and the psychopaths. So especially over here, you know, they've been they've been trying to get him out since he was in, and they're not going to stop. You know, as evidenced by their continuing sort of pursuit of him with the impeachment thing and 3+ years of Russiagate, which now we know. You know, Trump just declassified all those documents. He released them. And we know for a fact that Russiagate was conjured by the Clinton campaign as a political attack. And the FBI knew this. You know, she informed the FBI of this during the campaign, and all these documents have come out and are available for anyone to review.
Yeah, that's a problem though. They're available for people to view, but we don't get, our media doesn't just tell us and come out with it. It doesn't say,
of course. Well,
okay,
the media is not there to inform; it's there to disinform. Or
I just find that so irritating. Why can't they just come out and say, okay, sorry, we've been lying a lot about everything. COVID is a complete lie, etc., etc.
You know, what would be interesting would be how they, if Biden won, to see how the media immediately erased the COVID narrative. Oh, it's gone. Oh, there's a vaccine. You know, like it's gone. Like literally before January 20th, it would be, you know, COVID would be handled and it'd be no more of a problem.
Yeah, no idea. I'm glad I'm not in the States anyway. But there we go. Yeah. I say that, but the UK isn't really much different, really, in a way. Does tend to be on the same script to a point, just have different runners and riders.
Yeah, exactly. Very much the same sort of trajectory, which kind of just goes to show that the real decisions are being made at levels above the national level. They're being made at a supranational level.
By who?
Who knows? Not politicians, clearly. Politicians are just, you know, taking orders from somewhere. You know, a lot of them have handlers. So they're not, the real power is, you know, well concealed. You know, these people probably don't even have social security numbers or, you know, what we think of as bank accounts. And they just kind of move in the shadows and do all their kind of shadowy things. I have no idea what they do because I have no idea who they are, how they do it. But
I suppose there's a few names, isn't there, of Rockefellers and
oh yeah, it's clear Bill Gates is working for somebody, in my opinion. All of a sudden he's got all this money and he just wants to be so philanthropic and make sure everyone has access to vaccines. Like, come on, please, really? What? Doesn't make any sense.
No, it doesn't make any sense. I don't understand it. People don't understand it. Why would anyone with that amount of wealth why wouldn't they do something useful?
I mean, you could end world hunger like probably a few times over. That'd be one way to eradicate disease, right? It's just like, instead, vaccines. I'm just like, what? For a disease that like 99.94% of people survive? I mean, really? Is that what we need right now?
I know. It is insane.
Yeah, if we were really interested in, the long-term survival of the species, we'd be, helping Elon Musk get a colony going on Mars, like ASAP, because soon, like a big space rock could just come along at any time, smack into the planet, and then human civilization's either gone or set back a few thousand years.
You say the big space rock comes to visit us on Earth?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean,
that's just a conspiracy theory.
Well, it's happened before. It could easily happen again.
Yeah, I do find it interesting.
I wouldn't be surprised if it's actually like we've had, this before where we've had billions of people on the planet and then some sort of asteroid cometary space rock bombardment just set civilization back a few thousand years. Then it's like reset button, try it again. Well, because humanity has existed for I think 200,000 years is the most conservative estimate for how long Homo sapiens have been on the planet. There are some more crazy estimates that say, up to like 1 million years. So if we've had Homo sapiens on the planet for say 200,000 years conservative, say 100,000 years, very conservative, and we have all the same fundamental capabilities that we have now, and we went from being like hunter-gatherers, like 20,000 years ago, 40,000 years ago, to being a fully fledged, like spacefaring, like international global civilization. It makes sense that it's probably happened before and we probably suffered some sort of cataclysm that set us back.
Yeah. Who knows?
Yeah, exactly.
Coming back to this world and this time.
Yeah, it's back to the present.
What things are catching your eye at the moment, Brently?
So following the election reluctantly, but I mean, again, it's pretty obvious Trump is going to win. But I can't underestimate the propensity for malfeasance from the deep state that's kind of propping up it's kind of affected the Democrats. We don't really have a liberal party in this country anymore. We have sort of like the caricature of one. So I've been following their back and forth, mostly on Twitter.
Okay, deep state. Please tell us, what is this deep state thing?
So deep state is basically the sort of cumulative effect of wealth concentrating in the hands of warmongers since the post-JFK era, the Vietnam era. Hey, Daniel, can you make me one? Thank you so much. So it's basically just really, really wealthy business people and these politicians who have been around since the time. Like George Bush Sr. is a very good example. He was around to cover up the JFK assassination. He became the head of the CIA and then subsequently president, and then his son became president. So if that's not an example of what I mean by deep state, I don't know what is.
Okay.
Yeah, the Dulles brothers are another good example. Alan Dulles was the head of the CIA back when JFK was killed, and he was one of, JFK fired him, and then he ended up being the principal investigator on the JFK commission that investigated the assassination.
Oh, yeah.
So it's just like, if that's not a conflict of interest, I don't know what is.
Well, I know none of that has ever changed.
Exactly. That's why we still have the deep state with us today. It's not some outlandish conspiracy theory. It's a very practical term to describe the impact of a group of very wealthy, very powerful, very well connected individuals on the body politic in the US and actually in the world, because they tend to like to wage wars. You know, you could say the Iraq War, 9/11. These are all projects sort of sponsored by the deep state. You know, I think 9/11 is still one of the biggest crimes of, you know, my lifetime that to this day sort of goes unsolved. And we have the official explanation, but, you know, it's so riddled full of holes, it doesn't make sense. And, you know, I don't know what happened, but I know I certainly don't believe what the government says. So that's kind of what I mean by the deep state.
Yeah, it's all hidden under, well, we have the Daily Telegraph and the Sun newspaper.
Yeah,
in the UK.
It's a general term to describe a very complicated and nuanced situation. You know, Eisenhower warned basically against the deep state in the late 1950s when he left the presidency. You know, he coined the term the military-industrial complex. That's where we get that term. And that was sort of, today we say the deep state because that's become more of a common lingo, but it's the same thing.
It's an overblown business of war.
Yeah, it's like it's a business of war, basically.
And drugs.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, probably drugs, human trafficking, who knows? Like, we haven't, the deep state controls our military intelligence apparatus, and it controls our justice apparatus. So they can effectively avoid scrutiny. And we've seen what happens when they're scrutinized before. You know, Gary Webb sort of came out in the late 80s, early 90s about the CIA trafficking cocaine in from Nicaragua and Colombia, you know, bringing it in on private planes through these dummy corporations. And then he had like a suicide, and that was the end of him. But the story like lives on. So because of him, we know. And then there was always in Vietnam, there were stories of soldiers bringing heroin back and the bodies and the caskets of the soldiers, the fallen soldiers. So they've been importing drugs. You know, we think about Jeffrey Epstein and how he was trafficking young people to the wealthy elite in order to record compromising video or audio or whatever on them so that they could control them later down the line.
Well, drugs are important too.
Yeah, well, everything's. Yeah, the drugs give a lot of money towards the black budget, but then they can they acquire influence through people like Jeffrey Epstein. And who knows, Jeffrey Epstein may just be one guy. You know, he may have been bad at his job because he was a little too narcissistic, a little too high profile. He, I think, was a psychopath. I wouldn't be surprised at all if Jeffrey Epstein was a psychopath. Yeah, I mean, it's a good point. But and Ghislaine Maxwell, his infamous madame, who was the recruiter. She would get out of the car in like Central Park and see a girl and go give her a card and be like, "Oh, are you in modeling? Do you want to be a model for Victoria's Secret?" Because that was actually something that they could theoretically do, because Leslie Wexner, who was the big creator and big Victoria's Secret dude, he was a patron of Jeffrey Epstein. He actually gave him the townhouse that Jeffrey Epstein was living in over, I think it's East 971st Street, just east of, right off of Central Park. He gave him that house for $1, and it's a beautiful 5-story, you know, completely remodeled, like amazing piece of property. And I have no idea who lives there now, who's taking care of it now, but it's definitely worth more than $1. So it's like, what was Jeffrey Epstein doing for Leslie Wexner that inspired him to give such a gracious gift? Or what did Epstein have on Wexner that kind of manipulated him to do it? Who knows?
And who's that Wexler? Sorry?
Leslie Wexner, Wexner. He was the head of Victoria's Secret for a very, very long time. He just recently stepped down, I believe, in early 2020. Yup, that was him.
And the other name, Maxwell. So
Ghislaine or
Delated.
Gilan. I'm not sure. I think it's Gilan is how it's pronounced, but it's spelled Ghislaine, Maxwell.
And what's her
Ghislaine,
relationship?
Gilan. She was hooked up with Jeffrey Epstein in the late 80s, according to an article by Whitney Webb, through her father, Robert Maxwell, who was he was like the Rupert Murdoch of his day, and he was based in the UK. So he owned multiple magazines, newspapers, radios in the UK, and like he kind of rose to fame in like the 50s and 60s, and ended up being disgraced in this big embezzling scandal. He was basically stealing money from all his corporations. And
yeah, I kind of remember that. Yeah, that was a while back. I'm just trying to think.
his
Was he
story-
the guy did he die on a boat or allegedly?
Well, yes, he was. I think officially his death was ruled as a suicide because he was alone on his boat and they never found the body. So it's entirely possible that he just kind of retired from public life.
Yeah, I remember it was about pensions. So whatever pensions they had.
Yeah, he was stealing money from the pension funds.
Yeah.
Stealing money from his own workers. Real stand-up guy. He also had like 9 kids, including Ghislaine, who was Ghislaine or whatever her name is, who was the youngest daughter. She
Okay.
was sort of his favorite.
Okay, and they've carried on his good work.
Yeah, and it's interesting too when you start to look into the family, because one of the older brothers, left the family and wanted nothing to do with them. And another one, I believe, I don't have a source for this on hand, but I believe the other brother alleged that the father, Robert Maxwell, had sexually abused him and the other brother, which is why they were sort of estranged. But I don't have receipts for that at the moment, so I feel weird saying it.
There's a lot to it, and there's a lot to all of it. It becomes really confusing.
Oh yeah, it's a tangled web. And just, following it you have to be, you kind of have to be interested, and you actually have to have the bandwidth. A lot of people don't have the bandwidth these days, because they're so worried about where they're going to live and how they're going to eat. I would know that that's intentional.
Yeah.
Well, because all this, the lockdowns and the COVID and all this stuff really came, it was about 6 months from Jeffrey Epstein's murder in his cell. It was August of 2019, August 10th, when he was found dead in his cell. And then I guess it was in the mid-March, really, was when they started locking things down the following year. So barely 6 months later. And they had been, I don't know if you recall, but the media cycle previously was sort of really drumming the Ukraine gate thing, the phone call that Trump made to the Ukrainian guy about Biden's son's financial ties to Ukraine. And that was all blown up into an impeachment worthy thing, which, pedaled down to nothing. The guy wasn't even impeached. But it was effective in dominating the media cycle and also drumming up the anger at the president. There's a lot of hate out there. And it's being driven by the media. And, a lot of people are easily swayed by what they hear from, any source, really. Yeah. It's just the media happens to be a dominant source, and it's given this sort of allure of authoritative speech where they, you're supposed to get accurate information from the media. That's what it's theoretically there for. But, probably over the last 50 to 70 years, it's slowly been turned into a sort of a thought control or a narrative control device. Operation Mockingbird was a CIA operation that was exposed back in the 70s, where the CIA was having working relationships with dominant members of the media and giving them information, giving them talking points, putting out what they wanted the people to hear. And we'd known that they've been doing it since the 70s, and then they claimed to have stopped it, but it's probably just gone all private. It's not like they actually stopped it. It's just now that it's not a government operation. It's a private operation.
Yeah, it's insane. What so in all of the, and I may have asked, but what are the main things that you're following at the moment, and you're interested in writing about or broadcasting about, out of all of the filth and muck?
So mostly I'm kind of focusing on the slow creep of like mainstreaming of pedophilia. It's been something I've been following for a while. It started, that was actually one of the reasons I started the YouTube channel, because I was noticing like these LGBTQ ideas being pushed on preteens. And I didn't like that, so I started to see a lot of LGBTQ ideology being pushed on preteens. Like, so these are kids younger than 12 or 12 and younger. And like one of the first things, the drag kid phenomenon, which I spoke out against pretty vociferously.
Yeah, I don't really know. Yeah, I suppose I don't really follow that myself, so I don't really know. But I think there's always been this thing of, media, movies, music, trying to really corrupt the youth and make things, even simple songs, but make them really quite perverted and popular. Sort of
like WAP.
I
didn't even know what that was until today. I
think there's lots of people listening who don't know what WAP is.
Yeah, well, that's good. Good on them for not knowing what that is.
Yeah, good on you. We won't say.
I mean, Jesus.
Well, it's just a terrible song with a woman who needs a cleaner.
I just can't believe it. Yeah, or a mop. I just can't believe that it's become so popularized and it's so memeable.
That is interesting how these really quite quirky songs do become suddenly very popular when they're really, really quite disgusting. And I don't know, they just seem to be very well written, almost like there's professionals writing it who aren't just the singers for a particular reason. I don't know.
Indeed. Somebody told me, I was discussing it online, and somebody told me that WAP was a empowering song that
right.
That said that women were taking their sexual prowess into their own hands, and I'm just like, really that's is that what you think like little girls feel like when they hear the song? I mean, come on. I don't know. So like one of the things that I talked about in one of my recent videos was Cuties, and this Netflix movie that sort of was ostensibly there to discuss overt sexualization of children, but ended up being more like softcore kiddie porn.
Yeah, I think I did see a clip of it that was floating around.
It's bad. It's really graphic.
And it was, essentially young children.
12-year-old girls.
Dancing, but dancing in a way that, even 18, 20-year-olds you'd think that's disgusting. But
incredibly sexually suggestive dancing, yes.
Yeah.
And the outfits that the filmmakers chose to put the girls in, and the camera angles and the camera focus that the filmmakers chose, it was not a statement against the sexualization of children. And that's why Texas actually a grand jury brought down charges against Netflix, and they're going to be prosecuting them for inappropriate public displays.
Oh, wow. Well, it's good there is, some voices, and they're, standing out about it and actually making action about it.
Oh, there's huge backlash. Netflix lost like 50 points in their stock. They're dropped like 10% when I'm not sure what it's at now, but it went from like 550, hovering around 550 a share, to under 400 during the height of the controversy.
They also lost my £5 a month.
Good.
It was the first thing I did, actually. Well, because there was a few scandals about Netflix, and I didn't want to support them anymore. So,
Yeah, it's really good for people to vote with their dollars or pounds or whatever their cash is. It's a great way to express yourself and actually make an impact. It's like voting.
Yeah, and it's left me just a little bit confused about some of the people who were mentioned by opponents, different outlets in the alternative media, about just how many of the actors, actresses within the Hollywood sphere were involved in pedophilia. So I, for instance, I saw the name Tom Hanks, but I thought, hang about, that doesn't make any sense, or does it? I don't know. Or is it just a name that somebody tossed up? And I don't know. Have you ever heard that, or am I just?
I've seen his name mentioned in connection with, like, you know, the Hollywood satanic pedophile elite, but I haven't seen any evidence that directly connects him. At least nothing that's come across my feed.
Yeah, and I think that's sort of one of the problems, really. It's it can be very easy to implicate and highlight somebody, some popular figure in this realm, but people do it without really, well, due diligence. I sound like I'm talking about property, but
That's a fair assessment.
Pardon?
It's a fair assessment. That's kind of why I really liked Whitney Webb's research into the whole Jeffrey Epstein thing, because she brought all the receipts.
Okay, who's that?
Whitney Webb is a writer researcher based out of Chile. She's an American expatriate, and she writes about. She came to my attention when she started doing all this coverage of Jeffrey Epstein shortly after his death, and she's the one that sort of charted out his direct involvement with the Israeli Mossad, and they interviewed a ex-Mossad guy, Ari Ben Menash, I believe his name was. And he was the one that told them that Epstein was well connected to the Mossad and hooked up with Robert Maxwell in the late 80s and was charged with trying to get compromise on American politicians. And his big whale was Bill Clinton. And they wanted to get compromising information on Bill Clinton because I think they knew or had an idea that he was going to be going to the presidency at some point in the future. And so, you know, he flew on the Lolita 26 times. He was a regular visitor at Epstein's Pedo Island. So, I mean, I can put two and two together. So it's pretty much, that would explain why he was so valued in that community if he was able to succeed in that mission, and probably others like it.
Sorry, say that again. Epstein and who?
Bill Clinton. He was charged with getting compromise on Bill Clinton. So I guess they could make sure that he was controlled when he was in office.
Okay. And what is Hillary Clinton doing these days? Is she still?
They're investigating. The most recent thing I heard was that they're investigating her again and the Clinton Foundation for their role in pushing this sort of Russiagate narrative.
Okay.
And the most recent release on that was Trump declassified a bunch of documents from the Department of Justice, which revealed that the whole Russiagate thing, like many of us thought from the beginning, was completely political. It was based on nonsense. There was no evidence. It was just a propaganda weapon. And Hillary Clinton herself and her campaign informed the FBI of this in advance of, you know, even advancing the narrative, just so that they would know. And all these documents have been declassified and released to the public. So the public now has direct evidence that the whole thing was a lie. You know, 3.5 years later, it was one big lie. It was one big propaganda campaign. And it was the centerpiece of the whole Democrat political agenda for, you know, the entire Trump presidency. It was that hashtag resist. And that's basically all the Democrats did. They didn't get a single progressive thing done. And all the progressive things they tried to push were clearly not going to go anywhere because they were just so outlandish and not willing to compromise. And, you know, like, again, I would pose it that's by intent. We're not meant to have an actual liberal party that's, you know, progressive here in the United States. We have two parties being puppeted.
Do the Democrats actually stand for anything, or do they just rant about how much they hate Trump?
I would say it's more towards the latter, and then they will use their historical issues like women's rights, gay rights, civil rights. They'll use those as rallying points that they can rally the base with to be like, oh, look, we're still progressive because we care about XYZ, when it's really just BS. They don't actually, you look what the Democrats are doing in the United States now. They've, in the name of civil rights, they let, cities around the country be destroyed frequently. We have crazy riots, and
yeah, that was strange.
And then they don't enforce the laws. They don't prosecute the people that are doing the crime. The cops they just kind of let it go. And then they come looking for, like, businesses are destroyed, lives are shattered. And they make it out like this is somehow somebody else's fault other than their own. It's like, this is your house. Like, you let these people into your house, they threw a party and destroyed it, and now you want to blame somebody that wasn't even there? Like, come on. Don't make no sense.
And I was seeing reports defund the police, which didn't seem a very sensible thing to do. Yes, the police do have their faults and are not completely innocent in what their activities are. But I think removing all of the funding for the police and removing the police then will just create a vacuum, and you just end up with, I would imagine, just crooks running gangs, and I don't know, but yeah, it's just another thing I just found very confusing. Why would you want to take the money away from the police? Yes, I can see reasons for it at times, but it's not very practical.
Yeah, no, I mean, for myself, I think I've been concerned about police malfeasance and criminal activity for a long time. And it's something that's always been with us, going back to Frank Serpico in the 60s and 70s. He was the one that really exposed the depth of corruption within the New York City Police Department, for example, and they tried to kill him for it, and he had to leave the country for a very long time. And it's even still risky for him back here, because there's a lot of people that would like to see harm done to him because of what he did. But
and who was that?
Frank Serpico.
Oh, okay.
He was a New York City police officer for many years, and he's my boyfriend. Well, he's my boyfriend's cousin, distant cousin. Whatever. But he came out and he exposed. He was like a whistleblower, basically, for corruption in the New York City Police Department. And there was this whole thing called the KNAPP Commission, KNAPP, where they investigated, and a lot of people went down for it, a lot of corrupt cops.
Oh, okay.
But cop corruption is a very real issue, and it needs to be addressed. And, police here are trained very quickly. They're given like a 3-month or like a 4-month program, basically, before they're given a gun and a badge. And frankly, I think that's ridiculous. We have doctors who are trained for 8 to 12 years before they are able to operate independently with, life and death in their hands, sort of. If you want to be an accountant, for Christ's sake, you have to get a 4-year degree. Mm-hmm. And if you want to be a good accountant, you have to get a master's, which is more like a 6-year thing. So it just strikes me that we have this force, this judicial force, which has the right to, use physical force to restrain, abduct, all in the name of law and order and with the full authority of the state behind it. And the people that are involved are not, trained for multiple years, like ongoingly. Frankly, I think every officer that's on the street should be a black belt. They should be able to handle physical interactions without resorting to a weapon, or at least without resorting to a gun.
Yeah.
And a big part of the problem too is the actual training. They sort of train these guys to be trigger happy, shoot to kill. They train them to be afraid of small dogs. Like, kill the dog, no problem. That's another problem we have over here is cops killing dogs. But it's just a situation, and like I think the bigger problem behind that is that we have a bunch of psychopaths sort of pulling strings, and until we grok on like a relatively wide scale level that issue, and I like to use the word grok there because it means like really viscerally understand, deeply gain perspective on the impact of the issue, we won't be able to really fix it, because all our attempts at fixing now, the big attempt is defund the police. It's like, do you guys not know history? Like when the Nazi Germany, one of the first things the Nazis did, the brown shirts, who were like this, they're basically like the Antifa of their day. They went around, they wanted the authority. They were having violent protests and destroying businesses. They were targeting Jews at the time, but now we're sort of seeing a very similar pattern, and it's all in the name of social justice. And it was the same thing then that we're seeing now. It's just a different form. And it's a shame that isn't being recognized and discussed more, because it's actually being driven by a hostile media and a hostile leadership cast, or a predatory leadership cast, whatever you want to call. I don't like calling them the elite. I saw an article earlier. It was like, we shouldn't call them the elite. We should call them the predator class, because that's what they are.
That's good. I like that.
So, yeah, and then until we really address that, and I think I don't think everybody with money is evil. I don't think capitalism is evil either. I think these are ostensibly, they're tools. And like any tool, you can use a tool to build, or you can use a tool to tear down and destroy. It's really the person behind the tool that matters.
Yeah. So how can we help fix it? I don't know. Can we fix it? Do we just give up and hide? And I don't know. I don't know.
Like, I'm just some guy who sees things and talks about them. That's about the extent of my capability. I'm not Jeff Bezos. I don't have, all kinds of potential to impact things on a large scale. But I do think that just talking about psychopathy, just talking about the deep state, just talking about these things that they don't want spoken of, is a little stab at the multi-headed hydra that is the evil properties, that are the evil thing that sort of runs this planet right now. And so that's what I can do, and so that's what I do. And I just talk.
Yeah, getting the word out.
I think the problem again is just that there's this blind spot. Like, we don't understand, the leadership cast can be predatory, or we do, but we don't deeply understand it, or it's not understood well enough by enough people. So
yeah, and I find it actually quite hard to get the word out. Again, I'm not as active as you are in that getting the word out type thing. But I mean, even just simple things like the mask. So if you're fairly literate and you do, again, I suppose it's you following alternative news sources, but you realize that actually masks, if you're wearing a mask, it actually is causing you a lot of harm. Depleting the oxygen. And so when I see people out in the street wearing a mask, it did make me really cross, say 6 months ago, and I just wanted to tell them, just take that off. You don't need it, and it's not good for you. But people don't respond very well when I start swearing at them and telling them to rip that mask off. And
no, I never would have mattered.
So I don't know. I really don't know why some people are so sort of entrenched in the propaganda, I guess, or they believe the news sources so strongly that they defend it. I don't know how it can be broken. What the magic pills are, or a squirt. I don't know. Cold water.
Yeah, well, again, I think just not wearing a mask while you're walking on the street outside is a statement in and of itself. And it's again, it's another little thing that you can do to sort of, buck the trend, or don't wear one when you walk into a store and wait for somebody to say something to you and then be like, oh, okay, no problem. But just that moment to be like, you be like, I don't need this. I won't do this. But, for the purposes of, being polite, I guess, or just engaging in commerce sometimes, which is a scary thing. It's a scary thing now that they've put this sort of prerequisite on commerce and travel. And it's like, now what will be the next thing? Because this will not be this will not be the last little thing that they sort of throw out as a requirement. This is just sort of the first thing. And, the next thing may be, vaccine papers. Maybe you have to have all your vaccinations, available in some sort of verifiable way on your phone if you want to get on a plane. Who knows? Who knows what they're going to do? But it's not about public safety. It's about control and compliance. And it's a shame that that's not more obvious. But again, what can we do? I think we can just keep talking. We can keep not wearing masks while we're outside, and only put them on indoors when someone tells us to. And that way it's kind of just a little, they have to go that extra step, like, I'm not going to just do it. I'm not going to just bow. Like a store, a shopkeep, or a train conductor will have to tell me, put a mask on.
Yeah, I suppose for myself, it makes me just very, very selective of where I do go to buy food. So which supermarkets. So I do find, though, that they're not consistent. So that it does, I don't know what it depends on, but some stores, someday they'll be more relaxed about things, but other days, for some reason, they will be very Nazi about it.
Oh yeah, it's probably the people, it's the people that are working, it's the people in authority, it's, and I think as this goes on, presuming we won't have some sort of new crazy disease, because that can always happen.
Well, yeah, we might get a proper one.
Yeah, we might actually get something that's
something that, yeah. I'm just thinking, be careful what you wish for. It's just one of those horrible, horrible phrases that is actually very true.
And I think this is actually especially enlightening, because if this is how governments and people are reacting to a disease that barely causes death.
Sorry, say again.
Well, if this is how they're reacting, if this is how they're reacting now to a disease that has an infection fatality rate of something on the order of like 0.14%, that kills a tenth of a percent of the people that are infected. If we actually had a real plague, a real contagion, a real nasty flu, or whatever it is that killed 5, 10, 15, God forbid 20 or more % of the people that were infected, it would be a nightmare. Like, who knows what they would be doing? They might be locking us down and threatening us with actual, physical violence if we don't comply, and it just goes to show that it's a dangerous time to be in population centers. I'm still in New York City. I'm trying to plan an escape, but the financial situation is not really conducive. I can't just go buy a house in the country as much as I wish I could.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
So,
yeah, it hasn't turned out, this particular apocalypse hasn't turned out to be The Walking Dead.
Right, but the next one might.
I know, that's so depressing. Just like... but yeah, I suppose for myself anyway, interviews like this, where we are actually talking about things and do something creative, productive, is a healthy release anyway. And even though we're just ranting about all of the problems in the world, and I think it's something for myself anyway that I do enjoy. And
it's definitely one way to process the sort of like collective trauma we're enduring. Just to discuss it with somebody and get it out and vent your feels. That's kind of why I have a YouTube channel. It's like one way I can kind of process and release stuff that stirs up negative emotions, because otherwise they would just be stewing the entire time, and then that would eventually like give me cancer or something.
Oh yeah. Have you got any film recommendations? Only because I don't even know why I asked that question. It's sort of strange things come to me at different times, and I don't really know why. But I think it was when you were talking about the police and defunding the police, and I was just thinking there have been a lot of films about the cops and different corrupt police forces. So I don't know. presumably you've seen quite a few films on that topic, but even if it, if you have a film or a TV series that you'd recommend people watch, I don't know, or have I just thrown one?
Like along those lines, not necessarily, but there is a movie with Al Pacino about Serpico. So it's called Serpico. And
It's
it
called
was
what, sorry?
Serpico, Serpico. And it's with Al Pacino playing Frank Serpico as the titular character.
Okay.
And that's sort of a good dramatization of the of his story and what happened and how it happened. And
Good documentary out he did a couple years ago also.
oh, and Danielle's telling me there's a good documentary about him too that he did a few years ago. And I don't know what the title is, but you Google Frank Serpico documentary, I'm sure it comes up.
Okay. Yeah, no, that sounds good. Yeah, I do like a good film now and again.
Yeah, those are good. I've been watching a lot of fiction lately too. What else is good? The Boys. The Boys on Amazon Prime is really fun. It's a little gory, but if you can get past that, it's a very interesting sort of satire parody on corporations, on Hollywood, on government, on war.
Okay.
It has some very interesting commentary on all of that stuff. And it's incredibly well written. I'm a big fan of Carl Urban. He's one of the main characters, and he's just an amazing actor. I really like his work, and he's so good in the series. And I think they're on season 2 now. They're releasing it every week or so. But the first season is up on Amazon Prime, and it's really good.
Okay, and that's called The Boy.
The Boys, yeah.
Okay.
That's on Amazon Prime. And I just recently watched the South Park Pandemic special. Oh my Lord. It's 40 minutes of South Park doing what they do best. And their commentary on the pandemic is just, it's on point. It's very appropriate. It's just so good. It's at capturing and caricaturing what's going on. And they don't actually have to caricature too much because the situation is kind of a caricature of itself. But they do it in a way that makes it really funny and enjoyable, and you can sort of have a laugh at everything instead of taking, everything so seriously.
Okay, is that available now then? You can...
Yeah, I think so. Most people can get it on HBO Max for free. If you have I think if you have like a regular cable subscription, you can get it on Comedy Central. Yeah, there's a lot of different ways you can watch it.
Okay. No, it sounds good.
It was funny. It was really funny. We watched it.
Yeah, I do enjoy South Park. Years ago, I was watching some of those. Very good. Very good.
And then I've been watching, I saw this series, it's a Showtime series called I'm Dying Up Here. And season 1 was on Amazon Prime for a while, which is how I watched it. And it's a sort of historical fiction looking at the comedy scene in LA in the 70s, I guess it was. And it's very funny, and it's very well acted, well written, and a very entertaining show.
Oh yeah, no, it sounds good. I'm going to have to listen to what we've just talked about, and write these down and find them. So I've, some interesting media to enjoy and relax to.
Yeah, very important to relax.
Yeah, no, it's very true. It's very true. Okay. Do you have any last words, or should we leave it there?
No, I would just encourage folks to keep paying attention to what's going on, to question their authorities. Don't believe things that they're told, just because it's coming from a health authority or a frigging politician or something. Do some research, compare, contrast, and decide for yourself what you're going to do for your health and your family, because otherwise other people are going to make decisions for you. And the more decisions we let other people make for us, the fewer decisions we're going to be able to make for ourselves.
Yeah, very true. Very true. A very good point. And yeah, thank you very much, Brently, for your time. And yeah, enjoy the rest of your day, rest of your week, rest of your life, rest of your but
No
yeah, cheers.
problem. Thanks
And
for
good
having
luck
me.
with your move or finding a
Yeah.
flat or job. And
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see as soon as possible.
yeah. Yeah. Fingers crossed for you too. Yeah, cheers. Take care. Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
New music.
Free fall in the moment, all our scars are open. In the light, in the light, high tide in the city. Feel it when you're near me. We're alive, we're alive. When the sky goes dark and you hear the thunder and you're standing up. Instead of running for cover, and there's a new dawn coming over the water, saying we're the ones, knowing there's no other. Would you be the last benevolent mouthpiece? Heaven knows we need you now. Would you be the most beautiful consequence of a world that's coming down? Standing up on our own for the things we know. Raise a voice, hear it echo. Raise a voice, hear it echo. Loosen in the ties and everything we're fighting. Let it go, letting it all go. Always have a reason for something to believe in. You never know, you never know. When the sky goes dark and you hear the thunder and you're standing up. Instead of running for cover, and there's a new dawn coming over the water, saying we're the ones, saying there's no other. Would you be the last benevolent mouthpiece? Heaven knows we need you now. Would you be the most beautiful consequence of a world that's coming down? Standing up on our own for the things we know. Raise a voice, hear it echo. Raise a voice, hear it echo. We know where we come from, we know where we've been. Takes a whole lot of broken hearts to change everything. Coming so far to be here again. But there's a new song singing, can't you hear it? Would you be the last benevolent mouthpiece? Heaven knows we need you now. Would you be the most beautiful consequence of a world that's coming down? Would you be the last benevolent mouthpiece? Heaven knows we need you now. Would you be the most beautiful consequence Raise a voice, hear it echo.
Thank you for listening to Everyman Radio. If you enjoyed this episode, please share with your friends on social media.
Goodbye.